Yeah, it's getting there. I'm starting to feel that way a little bit. Part of that is because of the expectations. The higher they are, the more sort of dramatic everything seems when it goes bad. And right now, things have generally gone pretty bad for the Eagles through the first 2 weeks of the season. And, we were waiting outside in the media tent where they had the press conferences after practice. Sam Bradford came and talked to the media, and DeMarco Murray was scheduled to be next. And they just announced that he wouldn't be talking because he hurt his hamstring. And no more real details on it. We don't know if it's a serious injury, just a precautionary thing, just an excuse to get out of talking to us. We don't really know the details, but anything's possible. But, given how bad things have gone for their running game through 2 games, losing, the number one back is not a recipe for fixing that.
No, it's not. And obviously, one of the reasons that maybe their running game wasn't very good, Josh Huff said he could hear the Cowboys calling out the Eagles' plays before they ran them on Sunday. Now, Chip said, I talked to Josh, and he didn't say that to us. What do you think is more believable, Josh Huff's side of the story or Chip Kelly's side of the story?
Well, I think it's a matter of, who said what and when. I think probably Chip went to him and said, hey, what's this about? Huff kind of probably having a head coach come to you when you're kind of a marginal player and confront you about something that you said in the media, can make a player a little nervous. So he may have walked it back a little bit in talking to Kelly. But, we've heard this before over the last couple of years that teams, defenses seem to never play call and seem to know what was coming. It's come up a few times. And talking to players today, Bradford and Jason Kelsey both said basically the same thing. The Eagles don't have a gigantic, thick playbook. They're not like Andy Reid's teams where there's a zillion plays, and you may not see the same play, for a month. There's a smallish playbook, and this is all part of the the tempo thing that Kelly likes to do. If you're going to have a high-tempo offense, an up-tempo offense, you're going to get out there with the same 11 guys, sometimes for a whole drive, only limited substitution. Because if you're substituting on every down like Andy Reid used to do, well, that takes time. So if you're trying to go up-tempo, you're not going to be doing a lot of subbing. You're going to keep the same 11 guys on the field. And rather than have huge, complicated play calls that can get confused when you're going up-tempo, it's a lot simpler. There's fewer plays. The idea is that if you run those plays well, and within each play there are choices and options. If the defense does something, and if Bradford has a play call and he calls it, and the defense lines up in a way that he doesn't expect or will be bad for that play, there's an option within the play. So the players can run the play, but in his head, Bradford decides, all right, instead of going to receiver A, I'll go to receiver B, or instead of faking the handoff, I'll give the ball to the back. Or instead of giving the ball to the back, I'll fake the handoff and then throw it. I mean, all these options are built into the plays. So it's possible that, they were calling plays out. We've heard it before, but the Eagles still believe that the way their offense runs, when it's working well and the tempo is in, kind of in sync and they're moving the ball well and the plays are effective, that they start to work together and kind of that all kind of feeds off each other to make everything work, smoothly. When things aren't going well, when you're getting a lot of 3 and outs, you're not, wearing a defense down by being on the field for a while and running the tempo, then everything starts to kind of bog down, and that allows defenses to figure things out a little bit better. So I think a little bit both are true. I'm sure Huff heard what he heard and said what he said and means it, but it's not something that's new to Kelly. He's heard this before, but it's something that he believes that the way they run their offense when it's working takes care of itself.
Yeah, Phil, last year and the year before, 2 years ago, the Eagles had the rushing champion, LaShawn McCoy. Last year, they didn't run nearly as effective as they did in year one, but still McCoy had over 1,000 yards. This year, the running game is completely inept. They're averaging 35 yards a game. So is the correlation that they don't have the talent or that teams have figured out this run game and this scheme?
I think it may be a little bit of both. It seems like, watching it, it just seemed like the Cowboys were running right into the gaps that the Eagles were creating. The Eagles had all these running plays where they kind of zone block, they kind of all offensive line basically has to move in one direction and kind of in sync with each other. And it just seemed like Cowboys defenders were just running right through the openings that are created in that movement and getting to the backfield before the Eagles could even get to the blocks. So you saw that happening. It happens to some degree in Atlanta as well, but it was really noticeable against the Cowboys, who are now in their fifth game against Chip Kelly's offense. So, familiarity, getting used to it, starting to figure things out. But some of it, too, when you had Evan Metz and Todd Hermans, who were, a little more comfortable and more effective, as guards, when you had them running those plays, and maybe they got to the correct spot a little faster, or made a block a little more effectively, a little more, decisively than some of these guys are doing right now. So it's probably a little bit of a combination, but there's definitely at least an element of familiarity allowing for some answers to what Kelly does. And it's now up to Kelly to come up with some new ways to take advantage of what teams are doing to stop him now is creating opportunities in other places. He just got to find them and start exploiting them and sort of force defenses to play it honestly.
Phil Sheridan's with us, ESPN.com, NFL Nation, of course, covers the Eagles as they get ready to take on the Jets. More injury issues. Let's see how they're planning on doing this. Cedric Thornton is out, and a lot of people talked about, hey, they got a good front seven. Well, all of a sudden, 2 inside linebackers and now a defensive end are gone. How do they replace some key guys in those areas?
Yeah, that part's tough. Kelly had left open today that Kiko Alonso could play. He did not practice yesterday or today, and neither did Michael Kendricks. I would be very surprised if Alonso plays. I'd be a little surprised if Kendricks plays, and Thornton is apparently definitely out. So, yeah, you're looking at 3 new starters potentially. Well, I guess Alonso didn't technically start in these last games, but he's essentially in the rotation, so he's a key player on the defense. The 3 guys are out. They were really excited about the way Taylor Hart is playing. He's got a sore shoulder and did not practice the last 2 days, so that's another problem. Vinny Terry can play, but if Vinny Terry and Fletcher Cox are the only guys playing defensive end, you start to have a little bit of a problem in terms of numbers. They can start out the game okay, but at some point you're going to need somebody out to fill in. D'Amico Ryans and Kendricks, if he's able to go, would start, and then you work Jordan Hicks and probably Brad Jones and maybe Najee Good into a rotation. You can get by with that. Basically, that's what they had last year. D'Amico Ryans, Michael Kendricks, with Najee Good, backing them up. I mean, that's basically how they started the year last year. So, it's not a deal breaker in terms of their defense being able to be effective, but it loses some of what they gained in the offseason by adding Alonso and by creating the depth that they created at these different positions. The depth, they can get by, but the depth is now gone. And that ability to bring in fresh guys who are good players, and can, bring some high energy and take advantage of a tiring offense, you lose a little bit of that with these injuries.
Phil, let me get your thoughts on Alonso, because yesterday, correct me if I'm wrong, Bill Davis basically ruled him out. Today, Chip said we're not sure. There was been reports that he's out for the year. Some say 2 to 4 weeks. What is the feel today around Kiko Alonso? I mean, I saw him, I guess he was out at practice kind of walking around. Does he look like a guy who could be done for the year? Does it get the feeling of that he could play on Sunday? What is your take on the whole Alonso situation? Because it seems to be a little bit up and down.
Yeah, it is. They're pretty vague about it, and, that's largely deliberate. Chip Kelly, the less anybody knows about his team and their injuries and that kind of thing, the happier he is. So he's not giving up any real information. And Alonso wouldn't talk to the media yesterday. Today he got inside, and I didn't see anybody even try to talk to him. I didn't see him. Didn't see him to talk to. So nobody's talking. Nobody's really talking what's going on. The reports that are out there, it seems like he's damaged the ACL in his left knee, which is the one he tore last year, and it's now a question of whether rest will be enough or surgery would be a better option. If he has surgery and they repair the ACL again, that would probably cost him the season. If he decides to just rest it, now you're looking at a situation where, he wouldn't play for a week or 2 or 3 until, an MRI shows it pretty well healed. But now you're dealing with a surgically repaired ACL that, has some tear in the tissue, and an ACL, an MRI can show you what's going on, but it's not going to tell you exactly, the clear picture that whether it's going to hold up or not. Playing football on it, if that's the case, is going to be a risky thing. So, they've got to be really careful with Alonzo here, because that's their only return in the LaShawn McCoy deal. Basically Alonzo, as the player they got back in the trade, and DeMarco Murray and Ryan Matthews as the guys they signed to replace McCoy were kind of the centerpiece of that whole thing. If Murray's not playing and Alonzo's not playing, you basically have nothing on the field except for Ryan Matthews, who they signed as a free agent in exchange for LaShawn McCoy, and that is not a particularly good trade.
Yeah, and we just got word from one of your colleagues over at ESPN, Adam Kaplan, Phil, that DeMarco Murray will have an MRI on his hamstring. So I guess the feeling, you got hamstring problems. Kendricks, I guess you can lump into this too. Those things linger. That could be this week, next week. You could just keep hearing about this. Oh, he might try to play until that thing feels loose. So there's a possibility that Murray could be, if there's a problem here, that the fact that he needs an MRI, that could be a dubious situation for him.
Oh, absolutely. And, running backs, the way they have to run and change direction and the things they have to do to be an effective running back, if you have a hamstring problem, the nature of being a running back is going to make that hamstring problem worse. So it's a very serious. If it's bad enough that they could be just doing the MRI to kind of make sure it's not any more serious than it feels, and it may just be a precautionary thing. But if it's serious enough that they're trying to figure out, how bad it is and what to do about it, that could be, a pretty bad sign for DeMarco Murray being ready anytime soon.
Phil, I want to get your thoughts. You wrote a piece about Byron Maxwell over at ESPN.com earlier today. He says, I've got to do my job. Obviously, he's taking blame. He's been getting picked on constantly. I mean, it looks like teams are saying, where's 31? Not get away from 31. In 2 games, I don't want to say, does this remind you or look a lot like Nnamdi, but do you see anything from Maxwell that makes you feel, hey, this guy's just getting his feet under him, it's a new system? Or is it the system that is making a Kerry Williams, a Byron Maxwell look like they are pedestrian corners?
Yeah, I think that's, the unavoidable conclusion you're going to get to if this continues to go this way for Maxwell. They brought the new secondary coach in, Corey Unlin, and who was supposed to be like, a big guy to get guys to focus on their technique and the little things and make sure that, everything was solid that way. And then, game 2, you're watching Maxwell give up a touchdown, and on which he doesn't look like he makes the greatest effort of all time to catch up with a receiver after the catch. It's just, I think the reality of it, that's how it looked. I think the reality of it is a little different. I mean, he kind of played inside, and got caught playing outside a little too much, and tried to come inside, and it was too late, and the guy got by him, and he knew he wasn't going to catch him. But that looks real bad. I mean, the guy that runs, 40 yards downfield, 3 yards behind the receiver, I mean, it doesn't really accomplish anything, but at least it looks a little bit better, That was the thing that first made me really think, boy, this supposed to have some Nnamdi Asomugha kind of feel to it, because he was a guy that, basically like he was out there jogging at times instead of trying to, get downfield and make any kind of contact with anybody. I don't think that's quite what's happening with Maxwell. He seems to care, and but the fact is, that was a technique problem, they said, and this whole idea of this offseason was the new coach was going to emphasize technique and make sure that did not become a problem as it did last year. So, last year you could say, well, maybe they just weren't the best corners in the world. And, but the fact that Bradley Fletcher went to New England where he's playing, and Kerry Williams went to Seattle where he's playing, that suggests to me that they're not the worst players in the world. So there is a little bit of an issue here. And as you see, these sort of, test cases, one in New England, one in Seattle, with guys coming here who were successful elsewhere not being successful, you really have to start wondering if the system or the coaching isn't at the heart of the issue.
Yeah, Phil Sheridan's with us, ESPN.com. NFL Nation covers the Eagles. Antonio Pierce said the other day that Chip Kelly is hurting the Eagles with poor decision-making. Are you looking at this 0-2 record and putting the blame squarely on the head coach, number one, first and foremost?
Yeah, there's no one else to put it on. I mean, the bottom line here is that, he went 10-6 2 years in a row with the team he largely inherited from Andy Reid. And, that was encouraging, but it didn't say anything about Kelly's ability to build a team. Now he takes over his control to build, to be the guy in charge of personnel, to build the team he wants. And, the decisions he made, are not looking particularly good right now. I mean, there's time for it all to turn around. It's not, I wouldn't fire him today because of what's going on in 2 weeks. I'm not saying that. I am saying that there's nobody else to blame if this goes wrong. If the patterns we're seeing, continue, if Sam Bradford is not a franchise quarterback, well, Chip Kelly traded Nick Foles in the second-round pick because he said Sam Bradford is a Super Bowl caliber quarterback, and that's how you get one of those guys. If you can't draft first or second, you're going to have to find a way to get one. So that's what he did. If Bradford's just an average guy, which he kind of looked like on Sunday, much more so than we thought, based on the preseason. If he's not a special player, then, Kelly made the wrong move there. If Byron Maxwell is Nnamdi Asomugha with a $63 million contract, well, Kelly's the one who gave him that contract. And he got rid of the players who were, if the players who were here were not well coached by his secondary coach, who he hired, then that's not really, a point in Chip Kelly's defense either. That's another point against him. So, getting rid of Sean McCoy, who never had 2 games like this in a row in his entire time with the Eagles. And, they not always play with great lines either. Sometimes they were pretty good. Sometimes they were just okay. That guy was disposable. Those guards, I can see the logic of not wanting to pay, both of the starting guards $5 or $5.5 million, which is what the salary cap numbers were going to be for Evan Mathis and Todd Herman. But if you don't draft anybody and you don't sign anybody in free agency and you just figure you can slap anybody into the guard spots, well, that's on Kelly too. So, if it's a disaster, and it's way too early to say that, but if that's what happens and these patterns hold, they're all on Chip Kelly. There's nobody else to blame.
Phil, obviously 0-2, you fall to 0-3, but it get the feeling in this NFC that even if you fell to that point, but does this team have that feel that 0-3 would just be insurmountable?
I think it would start to get there. The point you just made is the key, though. The NFC East right now is totally dysfunctional, really. I mean, when Washington is suddenly the team with some hope, that's the last team I would have thought out of the 4 would have had a chance going into the season. When they're suddenly the team with the most hope, or the glimmer of hope, that tells us something's really wrong. The Cowboys situation is unavoidable. There's nothing they could do about it. If Romo and Des Bryant don't get hurt, they would now be in a position to just kind of run away with this thing. And the Eagles, put them in that position by playing as badly as they did on Sunday. So, if they lose this game, now you're going to Washington, at 0-3. The wheels could come off really fast, and it's very hard to get to the playoffs from 0-3. It's only been done 3 times in the 25 years of this playoff format. That has not happened in this millennium. So that's something to worry about if you're the Eagles. And the division may give them a chance, but that's just a gift from the way fate is working out with all these other teams. That's not you doing a good job. The Eagles may have hope or a chance, but not because of anything they're doing, just because the other teams are not doing any better.
Eagles are undefeated in 9 all-time meetings against the Jets. They've never lost. 9-0 against this Jets team, which possesses a very good defense. Will be a very big challenge for Philadelphia. I'll leave you with this. Obviously, with this start and the GM, do you think at all that Kelly, I don't say get fired in season, but is he on the hot seat? If they miss the playoffs again, could we see the end of Kelly after 3 years?
I'd be surprised, just because, this all really comes down to Jeff Lurie. And, Andy Reid was probably done here by, 2009, and it took another 3 or 4 years for Jeff Lurie to finally, concede what was pretty clear to everybody else at that point. Lurie just gave Kelly this power, this authority. This would be a bad way if it continues in this down this road. That would be a bad way to kind of assert your authority and establish yourself as the kind of the czar here. But I don't think that Lurie would A, give up on Kelly that quickly, and B, also Lurie would then be giving up on himself. He'd be announcing to the world that he made a big mistake by giving Kelly that power. So I would imagine that Lurie's not going to do that, and he's the only guy whose opinion actually matters. We saw that with Andy Reid. I believe Kelly will get another chance, and that's probably the right thing to do. In terms of trying to have some kind of continuity in your team, and not be one of those, not having like what Washington has, where you have new everybody, coaches, quarterbacks, every 10 minutes. That you can't win that way. You've got to get a plan, stick with it, and ride it out. But sometimes plans go bad and don't lead to success. And understanding that that's happening is an important part of the job too. So Lurie will be watching this closely, I would imagine, but I don't believe that he would get to the point this year where he'd give up on Kelly.
All right, everybody, at Sheridan Scribe on Twitter. Phil Sheridan every Wednesday here on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. Never a dull moment at the NovaCare Center where the 0-2 Eagles take on the Jets in New Jersey. And, of course, the Eagles got to leave early because the Pope's coming to town. They're going to practice at Monmouth University for a couple of days. Always pleasure, Phil. Thanks so much.
Yeah, enjoyed it, Mike.